The bridge of the derelict space station shivered under the weak pulses of its failing engines. The metallic walls echoed with every footstep, each one a reminder of the fragile lives aboard. Captain Alara Voss stood at the center, her fingers wrapped tightly around the hilt of her plasma blade. The hum of the weapon vibrated through her hand, a faint but reassuring signal that she still had a choice. Outside the windows, the dying star painted the station in harsh, flickering reds and oranges, casting long shadows that twisted with every flicker of failing lights. Her crew had done all they could. Engineers scrambled across panels sparking with uncontrolled energy, their faces pale but determined. Soldiers moved silently, aware that even a single mistake could spell their end. Every one of them looked to her. She had to be more than a captain now. She had to be a symbol of hope in a place where hope had been buried beneath years of neglect and fear. The warning alarms had sounded hours ago. At first, it was the usual distress from a nearby system, debris storms that had pushed their sensors to the limit. But then, unmistakable and terrifying, came the unmistakable signatures of the Wraith, a race of biomechanical warriors whose reputation alone could turn even the strongest hands cold. They were massive, inhuman in their speed and power, their eyes a deep void that seemed to consume the light around them. The humans had fought and survived encounters with other hostile species before, but the Wraith were something else, something far beyond brute strength. They were precision incarnate. Alara's thoughts raced. Every scenario she had imagined fell short of the horror that awaited her. Her crew had prepared as best they could, energy shields calibrated, weapons armed, escape routes planned. But the Wraith didn't follow plans. They didn't reason like other species. They destroyed. And now they were here. A shadow passed across the bridge, dark and tall. The bulk of the Wraith commander filled the viewport, its presence so vast that even the station's artificial gravity seemed to pull in reverence. It stepped through the hatch with a grace that belied its size, each movement calculated and precise. Its limbs, part organic, part machine, gleamed under the flickering lights. The hiss of its breath, mechanical and alive, filled the chamber. Alara raised her plasma blade. She was trembling, but not with fear, more with the weight of responsibility. She was humanity's shield, not just a captain of a failing station. She faced the Wraith alone, knowing the others depended on her courage. The Wraith paused, tilting its head in what humans might have called curiosity. Its movements were deliberate, as if studying a puzzle. Then it spoke. Its voice was not loud, not a roar, but a low, unsettling tone that seemed to echo in the bones rather than the air. "You are holding it wrong." Alara froze, confusion rippling through her. The statement was almost absurd in the moment. The Wraith should be attacking, tearing through her defenses, yet it stood still, watching. Its words were not mockery. They carried a darker weight, an almost clinical observation, as if it had discovered a flaw in her very essence. She swallowed hard. "My last words," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady, "are yours to hear." The Wraith's eyes flickered, a deep crimson light glowing from within its void-like sockets. There was a pause, a fraction of time stretched into infinity, as if the creature weighed the lives before it, including her own. Then it advanced. Alara stepped aside, feeling the heat from the plasma blade in her hands. She struck out, a quick swing aimed at testing the Wraith's reaction. But the alien was faster than thought, faster than instinct. It blocked her strike with one arm, the metal and organic fusion absorbing the force. The impact rattled her bones, but her grip did not falter. "You rely on strength," the Wraith said, its voice almost a whisper now. "But it is irrelevant. Predictability is weakness." Alara's mind raced. Strength alone would not win this fight. She had no illusions of survival through sheer force. But humans had something the Wraith could not understand: instinct, improvisation, and the ability to adapt in ways no machine or organic hybrid could anticipate. She ducked under the Wraith's next swing, rolling to the side. Sparks flew from the walls where its weapon arm had scraped. Her eyes caught the station's failing systems, vent lines, exposed conduits, energy flows. She realized she had a weapon the Wraith could not predict, the station itself. "Crew, follow me," she commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. Engineers and soldiers alike responded without hesitation, trusting her. Together, they moved through the narrow corridors, luring the Wraith deeper into the station, closer to its core where the energy flows were unstable. The Wraith followed, its massive form moving with eerie precision. It adapted to each trap, each trick, but with every calculated step, it revealed something Alara could exploit. Humans did not follow patterns. They improvised, adapted, and sometimes they dared where other species would hesitate. In the engine room, she set the stage. Exposed conduits hummed with raw energy, sparks leaping across gaps in the metal flooring. Magnetic stabilizers hummed weakly, their fields fluctuating dangerously. She signaled her crew to prepare, not for a fight of brute force, but for a battle of wits, agility, and instinct. The Wraith entered, its movements confident. It was a predator sure of its dominance, but humans thrived in chaos. Alara triggered the first sequence, magnetic pulses that sent the Wraith's legs slipping on the metal floor, its massive form destabilized. She darted forward, slashing at critical points, avoiding direct confrontation where its strength could overwhelm her. The alien hissed, frustrated but fascinated. "Unpredictable," it muttered. "Incalculable," her heart pounded. Every moment was a gamble, every move a calculated risk. Humans were not perfect, they were reckless, stubborn, and daring, but that was precisely their edge. Where the Wraith calculated patterns, humans invented them on the fly. Where it relied on brute precision, humans relied on adaptability. Alara's crew played their roles perfectly. Engineers manipulated the station's failing systems, creating sudden energy surges and localized gravity shifts. Soldiers provided cover, striking from unexpected angles. The Wraith, despite its size and skill, was caught off balance again and again. In a narrow corridor, Alara faced the Wraith again. Its eyes glowed like molten metal. "Your species is different," it said, almost as if admiring a flaw. "They are unpredictable, dangerous." Alara raised her blade not with fear but with purpose. "We survive," she said simply. "We adapt, that is humanity." The Wraith tilted its head. Perhaps it understood the truth, though it could not admit it. Humans were not merely creatures of muscle and bone. They were strategy, instinct, and heart. Every unpredictable move, every creative solution, every risk taken against impossible odds was a testament to their uniqueness. The confrontation escalated, the narrow corridors echoing with the clash of weapon and metal. Sparks flew, alarms wailed, and the station itself seemed to pulse with the energy of battle. Alara's strikes were precise, not because they were flawless, but because they were human, messy, desperate, creative. She dodged, weaved, and countered, using the Wraith's own size and momentum against it. For the first time, the Wraith faltered. Not because it was weak, but because it could not calculate the chaos of human ingenuity. Alara smiled faintly, feeling the truth of her species' strength in the pounding of her heart. Humans did not need perfection to prevail. They needed courage, creativity, and will. The Wraith roared, a sound that shook the walls and echoed in the station's skeletal structure. It lunged forward, intending to crush, to destroy, but Alara had prepared for this. With a swift movement, she redirected an energy pulse from the station's core, sending it crashing into the Wraith's midsection. Sparks and energy arcs tore across its form, staggering it. Alara stepped closer, blade raised, her mind clear. She did not see a monster but a challenge. Humans faced insurmountable odds all the time, not in grand battles but in everyday survival, and every time they found a way. The Wraith recoiled, its expression unreadable, a mixture of fascination and disbelief. It had expected a simple, predictable confrontation. Instead, it faced something entirely alien, the human spirit. Alara's chest heaved with exertion, but she stood firm. "You told me I was holding it wrong," she said softly, almost to herself. "Maybe you just never learned how humans hold on." And in that moment, for a fraction of time, the impossible seemed within reach. The battle was not over. The station groaned under strain, sparks flew, and danger lingered in every shadow. Yet Alara knew one truth above all. The humans aboard this station were not defeated. Not yet. And perhaps in their unpredictability lay a hope the Wraith could never destroy. The station shook violently as energy arcs danced along the walls. Sparks fell like artificial rain, sizzling against the metal floors. Captain Alara Voss pressed herself against a wall, feeling the vibrations of the failing structure ripple through her body. Every step, every breath reminded her that the Wraith was still there, still hunting, still as dangerous as ever. Her crew moved with quiet efficiency. Soldiers kept low, their weapons trained on the shadows. Engineers scuttled across damaged panels, rerouting power, trying to stabilize the failing systems while remaining mindful of the predator stalking them. The station itself was a trap, but a dangerous one. Every misstep could mean death, not just from the Wraith, but from the unstable machinery that could collapse the hull or overload the reactor. Alara scanned the corridor ahead. The Wraith had disappeared around a bend moments ago, but she could hear the faint hum of its mechanical movements, almost like a heartbeat in the dead silence of the station. She gripped her plasma blade tighter. The weapon hummed softly in response, a familiar reassurance amidst the chaos. "We need to move," she whispered to her second-in-command, Lieutenant Corin. "Lead the crew toward the control center. If we can access the central nodes, we might turn the station into more than a trap." Corin nodded, his face tense but determined. "Understood, Captain. Everyone stay alert." As they advanced, the corridor ahead flickered with dying lights, revealing glimpses of the Wraith's massive form, watching from shadows. It moved differently now, not with confidence but with measured caution. Alara noted that. The alien was calculating. It had underestimated them once. Now it was learning. She led the crew down twisting hallways, through maintenance shafts and over broken catwalks. Every turn, every step was a careful balance between strategy and instinct. Humans thrived in chaos. Machines thrived in order. The Wraith, powerful and precise, had strength, speed, and calculation. But humans had unpredictability, intuition, and creativity. They reached a junction where the energy conduits ran dangerously close to exposed panels. Sparks jumped between the circuits, forming miniature arcs that sizzled against the walls. Alara glanced at the Wraith as it emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing like molten metal. It stopped, evaluating. "You continue to evade," it said, voice low and vibrating. "I expected direct confrontation. You are different, dangerous." Alara raised her plasma blade, but she did not step forward. Instead, she watched, calculated. The Wraith's massive limbs moved with grace, but they were designed for strength, not improvisation. "Humans could exploit that. Difference does not mean weakness," she replied. "It means survival." The Wraith tilted its head and then lunged. Its speed was terrifying, but Alara was ready. She sidestepped, drawing it past the exposed energy lines. Sparks flared violently as its arm struck the conduits, sending a shower of electricity into the corridor. The alien reeled, momentarily destabilized, giving Alara the opening she needed. "Now!" she shouted to her crew. Engineers activated the emergency reroutes, sending bursts of magnetic energy along the floor. Soldiers fired from above, distracting the Wraith, forcing it to adjust constantly. Humans were unpredictable. Their movements were unplanned yet coordinated, chaotic yet effective. The Wraith stumbled, crashing against a bulkhead. It roared, a mechanical sound that shook the station's hull. Alara pressed forward, slashing at a weak joint revealed by the impact. Sparks erupted as the plasma blade cut through the armor. The alien hissed, recoiling, but it was learning, adapting. Alara knew they had only moments. Every action, every choice could be their last. She scanned the corridor again, noticing the maintenance lifts and conduits running overhead. An idea struck. Humans were not bound by logic in the same way the Wraith was. They could improvise, manipulate, and take risks others would not. "Follow me," she shouted. "Use the lifts. Draw it into the central node." The crew hesitated only briefly before obeying. They darted into the overhead lifts, scaling the walls and running across beams that would have been impossible for a machine of the Wraith's size. The alien followed, but its bulk made every step slower, every maneuver less precise. Alara's heart pounded with the rhythm of the chase. Humans were smaller, lighter, faster, not in raw speed but in flexibility. The station's central node came into view, a room pulsing with raw energy, circuits glowing dangerously. Alara led the Wraith inside, careful to position her crew at key control points. Engineers tapped into the node, diverting energy to create unstable fields that would trap the alien if it overextended. Every spark, every pulse was calculated for chaos, something humans could create but machines could not predict. The Wraith stepped into the room, massive and imposing. It seemed to sense the trap, but instinct alone could not protect it from human ingenuity. Alara raised her blade and stepped forward. "You underestimated humans once," she said. "You will not again." The Wraith lunged and the room exploded into action. Magnetic pulses surged, throwing it off balance. Sparks leapt across the floor, forcing the creature to dodge constantly. Soldiers fired energy rounds, distracting it further. Engineers manipulated the energy flows, sending arcs of plasma that danced unpredictably across the room. The alien roared, frustrated. "You are chaotic, uncalculable, dangerous." Alara smiled faintly. "We survive," she said. "That is what makes us human." She moved like water, dodging the Wraith's strikes and countering with precise slashes at exposed joints. Sparks flew, metal bent, and the air hummed with electricity. The alien's size was formidable, but human ingenuity was greater. They exploited its reliance on brute strength, turning its own power against it. The Wraith lunged again, and this time Alara did not dodge. She anticipated its move, stepping aside and letting the energy flows redirect the attack into the reinforced walls. The impact sent reverberations through the station, shaking the creature's balance further. Her crew moved like a single organism, each action unpredictable yet perfectly timed. Humans were not perfect, but they were adaptable. The Wraith could not predict every twist, every maneuver. It could not account for creativity, intuition, or courage. Alara felt a surge of hope. The Wraith, for all its strength and precision, was faltering, not because it was weak, but because it could not calculate the chaos of humanity. Humans thrived in unpredictability. They could improvise when logic failed. They could adapt when the odds were impossible. "Captain, it's weakening," Corin shouted, firing a concentrated blast at the Wraith's midsection. The alien staggered, sparks flying from damaged armor. Alara pressed forward, slashing with her plasma blade, careful to strike where the armor was thinnest. The Wraith hissed, its voice a mixture of rage and confusion. How are you?" Alara's eyes met the alien's. "We survive," she said again, more firmly. "Because we never give up. Because we think, we feel, we adapt. That is humanity." The Wraith roared, lunging in desperation. Alara dodged, leading it closer to the center of the node. Engineers activated the final sequence, sending a controlled pulse of energy through the room. The Wraith was caught in the unstable field, its movements restricted, its power working against itself. Alara saw her chance. She leapt forward, blade glowing bright, and struck at the exposed joint of its massive arm. Sparks erupted, metal bent, and the alien stumbled, struggling to maintain balance. Humans did not need to be stronger. They needed to be smarter, faster, and more daring. The Wraith faltered again, now clearly understanding the truth. Humans were not machines. They were unpredictable, creative, and fearless, and that made them dangerous in ways it could not compute. Alara moved with precision, striking again and again, exploiting every weakness she could find. Her crew supported her, every action coordinated yet unpredictable. The Wraith roared, a sound that shook the walls, but it could not regain the upper hand. For the first time, the alien hesitated. Its calculations failed. Its confidence wavered. Humans were not predictable patterns to be destroyed. They were living, thinking, adapting beings. Alara stood tall, blade raised, chest heaving with exertion. "You see now," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Humans are not weak. We survive. We adapt. We endure." The Wraith recoiled, its eyes flickering with an emotion Alara could not name, fear, respect, or perhaps confusion. It had underestimated humans once. It would not make that mistake again. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the hum of failing systems and the crackle of electricity. Alara knew this battle was far from over, but she also knew something crucial. Humans were not defeated. Not by power, not by fear, not by anything the Wraith could throw at them. She looked at her crew, battered but alive. Engineers, soldiers, and officers alike, every one of them had survived because they had adapted, because they had thought, and because they had trusted in the human spirit. Alara's gaze returned to the Wraith. It had been a monster, an unstoppable force. Yet in facing it, humans had revealed their greatest strength: creativity, courage, and the refusal to be predictable. The battle was not yet over. The station trembled, lights flickered, and danger still lingered in every corner, but hope had returned. And in that hope, Alara found the truth that would carry them forward. Humans were not merely survivors. They were something greater, something the universe had not reckoned with. And as the Wraith struggled within the unstable energy fields, Alara whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." The station shuddered violently, the core thrumming with unstable energy. Sparks flew like tiny fireworks across the walls, and the air smelled of ozone and burning metal. Captain Alara Voss stood at the center of the chaos, plasma blade in hand, her chest heaving from exertion. Around her, the crew moved with precise urgency, navigating the unstable terrain with practiced coordination. The Wraith was still alive, trapped but far from defeated. Its massive form strained against the unstable energy fields, limbs jerking violently as it attempted to break free. Its glowing eyes fixed on Alara, radiating fury and disbelief. This creature, feared across galaxies, had been challenged by humans, and it had not expected to encounter resistance like this. Alara tightened her grip on the blade. She did not see the Wraith as invincible. She saw its weaknesses, the flaws in its logic and design, and most importantly, the gaps it could not predict. Humans did not follow strict patterns. They adapted, they improvised, and that was their edge. "Captain, it's regaining balance," Lieutenant Corrin shouted, his voice sharp as he aimed his weapon at the struggling Wraith. Alara nodded. "Keep it distracted. Everyone follow the plan. Focus on the energy conduits." Engineers tapped into the core controls, diverting surges of energy to targeted points that would destabilize the Wraith further. The alien's own strength became a liability as it struggled within the shifting magnetic fields, each movement miscalculated and forced. Alara advanced. Every step was deliberate. She moved like water flowing around obstacles, anticipating the Wraith's every attempt to regain control. She slashed at exposed joints, sparks flying as the plasma blade cut through armor and metal. The creature hissed, a sound that resonated through the hull like a living storm. "You are persistent," it muttered almost grudgingly. "Your species is different." Alara smiled faintly, not in arrogance but in quiet resolve. "Different means stronger than you can measure," she replied. "We survive, we adapt, we endure." The wraith lunged, its massive arms swinging with terrifying force. Alara ducked and rolled, letting the momentum carry it past her. She redirected the strike into the unstable energy fields, and the alien staggered, sparks erupting from its armor. It roared in frustration, but every movement it made now played into human hands. Soldiers fired precise bursts, targeting weakened panels. Engineers manipulated the conduits, creating unpredictable surges of energy that forced the wraith into constant adjustments. It was powerful, relentless, but every step was one miscalculation closer to defeat. Alara pressed forward, weaving between arcs of energy, her blades striking in rapid succession. Humans did not rely solely on strength. They relied on instinct, creativity, and courage. The wraith, built for precision and overwhelming power, could not adapt to such chaos. "You survive not by strength," it growled, staggering, "but unpredictability." Alara's eyes gleamed with determination. "Exactly, that's humanity." She leapt onto a raised platform, bringing herself above the wraith's reach. From this vantage, she could see the full scope of the room, the pulsating energy conduits, the unstable core, and the massive alien struggling below. She calculated her move carefully. Humans thrived where logic failed. They could take risks that other species could not, turning danger into advantage. "Prepare the final surge," she commanded engineers. "We end this now." A synchronized hum filled the room as energy pulses aligned. The magnetic field shifted violently, forcing the wraith to its knees. Sparks erupted across the floor, walls, and ceiling. The alien roared, thrashing, but its movements were slow, constrained, and predictable. Alara ran along the platform, her plasma blade slicing at vulnerable points in the wraith's armor. Sparks exploded with each strike, metal bending and breaking. The alien's hissing voice rose in frustration and disbelief. "How can you?" it demanded, struggling against the magnetic fields. Alara stood above it, chest heaving but eyes unwavering. "Because we are human," she said firmly. "We survive when others fail. We adapt when others falter. We fight when everything seems lost." She slashed one final time, cutting through a critical joint near the wraith's core. The alien let out a sound that was part roar, part hiss, and its massive frame collapsed to the floor, sparks flying from exposed circuits. The energy fields pulsed one last time, forcing it down completely, immobilized. The room fell silent except for the hum of the failing systems. The wraith, the creature that had conquered countless worlds, was defeated, not by sheer power, but by the ingenuity, courage, and unpredictability of humans. Alara lowered her blade, feeling the tremors in her arms from exertion. She looked at her crew, their faces streaked with sweat and soot, yet alive. Engineers, soldiers, and officers alike had survived not because they were stronger than the wraith, but because they had thought, adapted, and acted together. Humans had turned chaos into their greatest weapon. She stepped closer to the wraith, now quiet and immobilized. It stared at her with glowing eyes, its voice weak and mechanical. "You are unique." Alara crouched slightly, meeting its gaze. "We are," she said softly. "And we will keep surviving, no matter what stands in our way." The wraith's eyes flickered, and for a moment there was a strange acknowledgement in its gaze. It had underestimated humans once, and that had nearly cost it everything. But it had also learned something new. Strength alone was not enough to dominate this species. Humans thrived in uncertainty, in chaos, and in courage. Alara's crew gathered around her, battered but resolute. Engineers were already stabilizing critical systems, rerouting energy to prevent the station from collapsing. Soldiers kept watch, scanning the shadows for any remaining threats. And yet, in the midst of exhaustion, there was a sense of triumph. Humans had survived against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Alara looked out through the large viewport at the dying star beyond. Its red glow reflected across the station, illuminating the scars of battle, sparks, and debris. but it also reflected hope. Humanity was not just surviving, they were thriving against impossible odds. Every improvisation, every risk taken had paid off. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability was their greatest weapon. "Status report," she called, voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her. Corin stepped forward. "The Wraith is immobilized. Energy conduits are stabilized, but the core is still unstable. We can maintain this configuration for a limited time, maybe enough to escape the station or prepare for extraction." Alara nodded. "Good. We buy time and then we move. Humanity survives even in the face of impossible odds. Remember that. We are human and that is enough." The crew nodded in unison, a silent understanding passing between them. They had faced annihilation, stared into the eyes of a creature designed to conquer, and yet they had emerged alive. Not because they were stronger, faster, or more durable, but because they were human. Alara turned back to the Wraith. It was still conscious, still glaring at her, but it was trapped. She felt no hatred, only clarity. The creature had been a test, a challenge, a mirror showing humanity what it could achieve when pushed beyond limits. Humans were adaptable, creative, and relentless. That combination made them unstoppable in ways the universe could not anticipate. She raised her blade once more, not for attack, but as a symbol. "You underestimated us," she whispered, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "And you will never do it again." The Wraith's eyes flickered, perhaps in recognition of the truth it could not articulate. Strength alone could not conquer humans. Humans adapted, survived, and evolved with every challenge. That was the lesson. That was the truth. Alara exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the battle lift slightly from her shoulders. Around her, the crew moved efficiently, stabilizing the remaining systems and securing the station. Sparks still flew, alarms still echoed faintly, but for the first time in hours, there was a sense of control. The captain took a step toward the viewport again, looking out at the dying star. It cast long shadows across the station, illuminating the scars of battle. And yet in those shadows she saw strength, not just her own but humanity's. Humans could survive anything, outthink anything, and endure anything. That was the truth the Wraith could never fully understand. "Prepare for extraction," she commanded. "We are not finished." Humanity always moves forward, and we will continue to do so, no matter what stands in our way. The crew moved to obey, their energy renewed by the victory. The Wraith remained trapped, a silent reminder of what humans could overcome. And Alara knew, deep in her heart, that this was only the beginning. Humans were not defined by their size, their power, or their tools. They were defined by their courage, creativity, and refusal to be predictable. Against impossible odds, they would endure, survive, and thrive. And in the quiet hum of the station, amidst sparks and unstable energy, the captain allowed herself a small smile. Humanity had won today, and the universe would never forget it. Alara raised her blade one last time, a symbol of defiance, courage, and hope. "We are human," she said softly, "and that is enough." The Wraith remained trapped, the station trembled around them, but humanity had survived. And that survival was more than victory. It was proof that unpredictability, courage, and intelligence could overcome even the most terrifying of foes. The battle was over, but the story of humanity's strength had only just begun.